Alan Rowland again. We're going to continue with our study of this coal strike that took place in 1921, 1920, 1920, 1921. Let me go back to my introductory page. This is what you saw in the previous recording anyway. Coal strike 1920, 1921, Walker County, Alabama. I'm not going to go through all of that again. And just to refresh your memory, it's state of Alabama. And, of course, these coal strikes are going to take place up in Walker County. You can see where Walker County is located. We went through that in the previous one. Now, one of the last things that I mentioned to you when we went through part one was that Woodrow Wilson was trying to intervene in the strikes that were taking place throughout the country here. A lot of this was due to the effects of John L. Lewis, the United Mine Workers Association. And he organized a special committee, and this was Woodrow Wilson that did this, to develop a plan to recommend what they hoped to be would be a satisfactory wage increase for the miners and for the union miners. And what they ended up doing was recommending 27%, which the union at that time, UMWA, felt like that was an inadequate amount, for that time anyway. So anyway, we're going to see that a number of strikes will continue. A lot of agitation will take place trying to force non-union coal miners to become union coal miners, part of the UMWA. So where I'd like to take you to is, let's go to Carbon Hill, and I'll show that to you on the map. Most of you that are watching this video have an idea where Carbon Hill is, and a little bit different than it is today, but not a whole lot different anyway. And so the time I want to take you to is the date of the 25th of July in 1920. There's a lot of agitation that's taking place in Carbon Hill and throughout Walker County in these coal mining communities here. And on this day, there was an individual, he's a black man, and he was a union miner, and apparently was an agitator, and was intimidating, so it is said, he was intimidating some of the non-union miners. This person's name was Arthur Hughes. And a deputy sheriff, and this was a deputy sheriff that was present in Carbon Hill, his name was Bill Barrett. And Bill Barrett, along with his patrolman Baker, or we call him Policeman Baker or Officer Baker, and anyway, they approached Arthur Hughes. And according to eyewitnesses anyway, that the deputy sheriff roughed up Arthur Hughes and, I don't know, maybe pushed him or hit him or something like that, and then backed away from it. Well, another striking worker, and he was a union person, and his name was Will Hicks. And Will Hicks approached the deputy sheriff, and he said, why were you bothering this individual? And anyway, they got into an argument there, and apparently Bill Barrett, shoved Will Hicks. And Will Hicks departed the area, went to his home, picked up two automatic pistols, and returned to the downtown area of Carbon Hill. It was actually on Front Street, which is next to the railroad tracks, if you're familiar with Carbon Hill anyway. Now, I must tell you about Will Hicks. Will Hicks was a sharpshooter from the Spanish-American War. He was known as a crack shot. In other words, he was deadly accurate. And he went up to the area in Carbon Hill on Front Street where the public well was. Let me show you what the public well looked like at that time. This is a colorized version of it. And by the way, this shows you some of the mining communities here in Walker County. Here's Carbon Hill, which is over here to the western part. And this is where the public well was. You won't find it that way today. It looks a little bit different. But if you look in the background here, we can see some of the old cars here, the vintage cars back in this direction here. This photograph was probably taken in the 30s, and you see some of the people out there, and you can see the well, which is right in this position right here. These stores still stand in the background. These are still present there. It doesn't bear the name such as Guttery Hotel anymore. If you go there today, this is what it looks like. And it's not a well now. It's just a pavilion where the well once was. And if you go back and look at that again, you can see the buildings there are the same buildings that we had in the previous photograph. And nonetheless, right in this area here was where Will Hicks was standing. And we'll find that Bill Barrett, the deputy sheriff, and Patrolman Baker, they were walking up the street. They were coming up the street there and trying to disarm Will Hicks. And they were coming from the east, moving to the west. And as they got up to this area right here, a confrontation right in this area here. A confrontation took place, and we don't know exactly what happened here, but sidearms, pistols were pulled. There was an exchange of gunfire there, and Bill Barrett was hit twice. And when he was struck twice, he went back across the street. This is Front Street here. He went back across the street. I don't know if it would have been this store or it would have been this store up here. Leaned up against the wall there and then collapsed to the pavement, and he died. And anyway, that was that. Well, then a gunfight took place between the patrolman Baker, the policeman Baker, and that of Will Hicks. Well, the policeman was hiding behind a post, and Will Hicks was out in the open, and he kept firing at the policeman, but he wasn't hitting him because the policeman was hiding behind the post. So Will Hicks then left that area and crossed the railroad tracks. You can recognize the railroad tracks here. Now, if you're looking back in this area here, this is where the pavilion was and where the well was. And Will Hicks crossed the railroad tracks and was over in this area and was attempting to reload his weapons there when he was confronted by another individual. And this was a citizen of Carbon Hill, J. Oliver McDade. And J. Oliver McDade had with him a pistol, and so they began to exchange gunfire with each other, other than McDade was hiding likewise behind a post. And then finally, Will Hicks dared him. He said, "Don't be a coward." He said, "Come out from behind the post and fight like a man." And sure enough, J. Oliver McDade did that. It was the worst mistake of his life, because when he did it, Will Hicks just shot him dead. Well, by that time, angry townspeople from Carbon Hill were just fed up with this, and it was over in this area right through here, and that's where they tracked down Will Hicks and just literally shotgunned him to death, and with rifles and pistols too. And he was subsequently transported by ambulance or whatever to Birmingham, and he died that night there. So anyway, it's a terrible, terrible event that takes place there. Alrighty, so anyway, things did not settle down whatsoever here after that, and in fact it even got worse. By September of 1920, 12,000 coal miners in Alabama were on strike. The strikes in Walker County took place here, up at Corona, Patton Junction, Coal Valley, we had Townley, Holly Grove, I've already mentioned here, Carbon Hill. So things were pretty bad there, and particularly in Townley, we had company officials and miners, and non-union miners, union miners that clashed there, and one miner was shot in the arm. So things were bad here. In Walker County, for the sheriff, Claude Guttery, he called officials together, particularly that of union members, and just said, we've got to put a stop to this. And for the union officials, they promised that they would do so. But unfortunately, this is just not going to be the case. Now, as I said, strikes were taking place throughout this area, and I'm going to go back to my map here so you can pinpoint an area. So where we want to go to, let's go to Corona, which is down here. It's west to Oakman. Here's Oakman, and also Patton Junction. And as I mentioned to you in the previous video, we have Patton, which is down in this area likewise. Patton is between Oakman and Patton Junction, and a separate community from Patton Junction and that of Patton itself. And so anyway, down in that area, the time frame we're talking about here is in September, and we had in Corona a coal mine there, which was called, well, appropriately, Corona Coal Company. Now, the general manager of Corona Coal Company was an individual by the name of Leon Adler, and Leon Adler had spoken and was in the presence of another deputy sheriff, and this deputy sheriff, incidentally, was named Earl Edgell. Now, Earl Edgell wanted to stay in the area of Corona, whereas the agitators were in the area of Patton Junction. And there was evidence to believe that these striking workers here, these agitators, were going to march on Corona and cause some problems in that area. And Earl Edgell wanted to stay in this area. But that was just not what Leon Adler wanted to do, and he wanted to organize a posse of 15 men to include Adler and Edgell themselves and march on Patton Junction. And that's what they did. Well, the striking workers found out what was going on, and they were in Patton Junction, and so they hid themselves away in old houses that were present there. And when the posse of 17, arrived there, they were ambushed. They were ambushed by these Union workers, these striking workers, and Earl Edgell and Leon Adler were both shot in the head. They both died. One died earlier in the afternoon, one almost immediately anyway. Two other of the members of the posse were wounded, and the rest just scattered to the wind. So it was a pretty bad situation with that. Now today, if you wish to go there, let me show you the areas we're talking about here. We look over on this area of the map right here. This is Corona, and if we go down to right here, this is Patton Junction, and here's Patton. Patton's not shown on the map here. The distance here from Patton over to Patton Junction is approximately 1.1 miles, and then you have about 3 miles over here to Corona. Share a couple of other photographs with you. Not much there today. These are all abandoned coal towns. This is Corona, and there's a Baptist church, I believe it is, right there, but just not much to that area. This is showing you the area of Patton. A couple houses there, trailers that are present, but just not much present. This is the road that leads over to Oakman, between Corona and Oakman. This photograph is all that remains of Patton Junction, and where the striking workers were was back in this direction here, where they were shooting at the posse here. Notice the railroad track, which is right here, which is still present there today. And anyway, so subsequently, and things have gotten so serious here. Let me find the photograph, which I put out of sequence here, and apparently cannot find this. And here it is, right here. And the governor of Alabama, Thomas Kilby Prison, as I said earlier, is named after him. But the governor called in the National Guard. Now, 550 troopers here arrived in Jasper, Alabama. And this is going to be in January of 1921, so we've moved into the next year. From this slide right here, we can see Alabama National Guard, 550 officers and soldiers. They were commanded by a Major Dallas Smith, who was really more of a spokesperson than anything else. Now, where these troops arrived, they came in by train and arrived at the Frisco Depot. That's close today. It's close to where the Walker County Humane Society is, where the Humane Society is, where the old Gentry Jungle was. The building still stands there, but it's not an active depot. I can remember where it was. But anyway, where the companies came from, we had Company E, Company G, and Headquarters Company that were from Birmingham. And then from Tuscaloosa, you had Company M, and you had Company K that came from Opelika. Now, the places in which they deployed are shown here. Company E went to Cordova. This is all parts of Walker County. Company G, Townley, Headquarters Company, moved over to the eastern part of the county and Empire. Company K went to Corona. Company M went to Nauvoo. All right, so I've broken it down for you here where you can see exactly in the county where these places are. Again, I don't need to repeat this, but Company M was here, G, and Company K. We had headquarters over in Empire, and in Cordova is Company E. All right. So we are just about out of time for my video. I only get 15 minutes per video. So why don't we stop right here? And it looks like I'm going to have to go into a part 3 on this video, and which we'll take care of that shortly anyway. All righty. Thank you for your attention.